Despite first clashing Randy Stradley and Chris Warner's title a comic book in 1989, it wouldn't be a year later in the release of Predator 2 with its cheeky use of an alien skull in the trophy case of the Predator that the interest in combining the two horror icons, both the xenomorph from Alien and the Yujia from Predator, would be seen as being brought together, and it was really that Predator's that alien skull that saw the idea really start to gain momentum. However, at the same time, it would still be stuck in development hell for a further 10 years until Anderson himself pitched his own script. But would Paul W.S. Anderson really be the right director to bring this clash between the two iconic monsters to the screen? I'm Howard.
I'm Kim.
And you're listening to Movies and Tea. Let's take it to the booth. Well, first off, welcome back everyone to another edition of Movies and Tea. We had a little bit of a break because we had to go off and, set some video games over at E3. Full coverage of that you can check out on thatmoney.com via our game on tweets, should we say. So, lots of exciting stuff there, but we'll cover on here, so we're going to get into some about Alien vs. Predator. The film which is very diverted in many ways, not only because of the fact that Robin Sanson directed it, but also because we finally got to see the Alien and Predator square off against each other, and many felt that, first of all, that it was a little neutered because it had a lower age rating than their previous films, which were all 18. This was a 15 here in the UK. And also at the same time that the violence in particular was really sort of held back, and many blamed Anderson of this because they linked it to what he'd done with Resident Evil, with its very annoying, shall we say, kind of ways for its violence. But, I mean, Kim, what did you obviously make of Alien vs. Predator? I know that you're obviously more a fan of the Alien saga than the Predator saga.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I honestly, I thought AVP was very enlightening, to be honest. It's the second time I'm watching it. Yeah, it's not the best movie, as in there's a lot of bad acting and a lot of weird dialogue. But that kind of pulls the movie down. But if you think about the story that it builds, maybe because I haven't seen Predator 2, that the story meant a little bit more to me, because it felt like I was starting to understand who these predators were a lot more. I'm going to be full disclosure that while I do like Predator a lot, I'm not a huge fan. I've seen it once or twice, and I kind of make fun of it a little every once in a while. Which gets my husband a little bit riled up because it's one of his favorite movies. But yeah, I mean, I think this is really great because you finally get to see who these predators are, and you really get to see what kind of villain xenomorphs and predators are, where as you watch this movie, you start realizing that xenomorphs are more like animals. They're instinctive creatures. They act on, impulse and that sort of thing. Whereas predators, they actually are a very advanced sort of civilization that seems to have reached Earth many, many light years ago, before they were all because of that, the predators have such a focus on, say, they have so much strategy and so much, they're hunters. So they really know how to, know their camouflage and know when to attack and be stealth and all that sort of thing. And you really see how smart the race is. And I think that behind all this, the story is really about the predators finally creating, I guess it's I guess this would be kind of a spoiler alert, where it's kind of they're creating a hunting ground that they come back to every, I forgot how many 100 years that they come back for. So it's really interesting to see this. Obviously, I don't know if all this was covered, how intelligent they were and stuff like that in Predator 2. But to me, this was really interesting to watch because while it wasn't really, I guess, aggressive or very, I don't know, what do you call it, I don't know. I thought it was fine the way it was. Yeah, I mean, it was okay. There was enough blood. There was, enough disgusting stuff, especially when, the the queen xenomorph was like laying her eggs, and there was some like really disturbing moments, but obviously like there are things that didn't age well. The CGI for one, like there were these really awkward moments. I don't know if they're CGI or practical effects, but they didn't really work that well. You can really see how the movie has aged in that sense. But I don't know. I mean, it's how you know. On the surface, I think it's an okay movie. Like I thought that I'd like the story, but maybe not so much the acting and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, this is a film which actually gave a lot more sort of. I don't know how we can best describe this. It gave us a lot more sort of depth to the creation of the Predators. So if anyone who's obviously like a complete fanboy like myself and read like the comic books and all the other gums that come to this fanography, it's got a really in-depth history that the Predators have and their own sort of codes of honor, which we see bits of in the first two films in how these Predators act and how they conduct themselves. Obviously, the Yucha, to give them their proper nerdy fanboy name, are a race of intergalactic hunters who, amongst their many prey, they enjoy hunting humans for sport, as we've seen in Predator 1 and Predator 2, and obviously in Rodriguez's reboot of sort of Predators, which saw them capturing some sort of dangerous humans, so to speak, and then dump them on their own hunting ground. This time the focus is obviously with them hunting aliens as another new rite of passage, and as you said, in this story, the Predators have been coming to Earth every 100 years, and we're led to believe that they're responsible for the destruction of the Mayan dynasty, because the Predators have used a sort of a team to form an alliance with the humans, so that the humans are viewing them as God, the Predators as gods, giving themselves willing sacrifice so they could create xenomorphs on Earth, and they would hold this hunt every 100 years, so that these young Predators can earn their bones within the Predator sort of standing. So, and if it got to the case where the aliens were winning, that they would just basically nuke the site, and that's what we're led to believe destroyed all the Mayans, which I thought was a really nice sort of touch. Mm-hmm. In the story itself, we are set in 2004, and the satellite owned by the Wayland Corporation, so we have a nod already to the later Alien movies, because it's Wayland and Utami, the corporation, like the big evil corporation who want to get their hands on the xenomorph. So at this point, it's just the Wayland Corporation, and in particular, it's led by the industrialist Charles Bishop Wayland, here played by Lance Hendrickson, who, of course, whose likeness would obviously be used to create the Bishop models in, like the Alien, the line of androids. I'm going to apologize right now. I'm just going to probably nerd the hell out on this episode. So you're probably going to get a whole bunch of useless information that you're never going to be able to use for anyone, but hopefully you all enjoy it. And yeah, Lance Henderson's the only one from the franchise who actually returns. Arnold Schwarzenegger was going to return, but he had just been elected the Governator, so he wasn't free, and Sigourney Weaver wasn't interested in returning to it. At this point, she was pretty much done with the franchise completely, so she was happy just to let it go off and do its own thing. Here in this sort of alternate sort of timeline, because it's weird when you look at these films and them being in 2004, which at the time of release was only a couple of years ahead, so it's kind of weird to have it now look back and be in sort of an alternate timeline. And basically they discover a pyramid buried in the, I think what this is now, it's in the
Antarctica?
Yeah, it's buried in the Antarctica, and they send out a team only to discover that it is actually a secret hunting ground created by the Predators, and they're now returning to do a hunt at the same time that this team accidentally managed to unleash all the xenomorphs inside the temple. So it's a fun little story. It's a completely different track than the other ones that we've seen. Obviously, in the previous, if we look at like the Alien sagas, it was always sort of the case of either the xenomorph comes into contact with the humans, or we stumble into their sort of territory. So it was always that sort of idea of humans sort of messing with things that they don't understand, be it us stumbling into their territory or us bringing them onto our territory. It was always that sort of crossover, and they were sort of like, it was kind of like in many ways, it was the haunted house in space movie, or whereas the Predator was always the action movie sort of standard, where we have the tough guy being hunted by the alien badass. The first Predator movie is just basically a balls to the wall 80s action movie, because we've got Arnold Schwarzenegger, we've got Jesse the Body Ventura, we've got all these sort of like staples of 80s action cinema there, and then we just have this twist about halfway through where suddenly it becomes like a sci-fi horror movie, where it's Arnold's team is just suddenly being hunted by this alien. So I think a lot these really great, the fact that we have these two iconic characters that you can see how they would slot together in each other's world. It's not like Freddy versus Jason or Freddy versus Michael Myers. Those which require a little more like, I'm just going to jostle this around a bit, so that sort of fits in. When you look at like the Alien and Predator, you can see, those two species would come from a similar sort of world, so it's very easy to slot them together. And I mean, even removing this film and its sequel Requiem, there's such a long line of comics and books and stuff that there's a whole alternate history with these two races just battling, and they cross over into other worlds, such as, they've appeared in Riverside, so in the Archie comics, they've gone into Judge Dredd, so we've constantly seen this battle. It has never been limited to just the film world. They've even turned up in Mortal Kombat, for Christ's sake, so.
That's true. Yeah, MKX had it in Mortal Kombat 10. Yeah. I don't know. I think that, just so we don't have an information overload, we're going to go back to AVP and look at a bit of the, this is about Paul W.S. Anderson. So how he chose to approach this movie would be something to definitely look at, which we always do. And obviously there are still some of those staples that he always had that we've always been talking about. He has this absolute love for long corridors or something like that, right?
Yeah.
And you have that right at the beginning. And I actually think this is one of the coolest corridors because it goes downwards and it slides down, and it's just it looks like intense stuff, But I think that one of the things I noticed, which I hadn't noticed the first time I saw this movie, was the fact that he kind of brought over a little bit of Resident Evil, since that was his previous movie, despite the fact that we did cover all 6 last time.
Yeah.
That he did bring a little bit of the Resident Evil in, because this time he uses the Predator's heat signature sort of concept, and how they had their home base, and then they had their little computer thing on their arm, and they would show those blueprint maps and then zoom in out and then go back into the next area, up on the top or something. And I thought that was really neat. I always find, I think that as we go through this Anderson journey, it's really interesting to see how every single movie he brings a little bit different. Something from the previous movie maybe, or something that he particularly loved, that sort of aspect that he brings over to the next one. And I think it really adds his own personal touch to it. I'm not saying he's the only person who's ever done that sort of concept of map and shifting spaces, but I think to see the connection between the previous movie and this one, I thought it was really neat.
Oh, definitely. He loves the map. That's for sure. It's such a great way, the way he uses, obviously, maps and diagram. We saw it in Event Horizon. We saw it, as you said, in Resident Evil, especially when we look at the Hive. And it's the perfect way of outlining what the structure is and where any particular character is at one time. And it worked perfectly well. The fact that we can obviously see with the Predators, they're using their tracking map, and they can see where aliens are, they can see where the humans are, and it was really great ideas of sort of concepts in space. And I have to say again, this is Anderson really fanboying out, because we've seen Anderson numerous times fanboy out of his favorite franchise, like Event Horizon. Again, there was elements of Hellraiser in there, and The Shining. Certainly when you look at Mortal Kombat, it was just sort of Into the Dragon, and Resident Evil it's like there's so many elements of Romero through that film, and as it went on, it was like he brought in things such as like the Mad Max element, and he was constantly reworking his favorite sort of elements from other films into this, and again we see more horror film homages here. Certainly the Wailing Village where we go into, it's very much like The Thing.
Yeah, I think that's like the first thing you realize.
Yeah, and it was only this time I was watching it, and especially the use, because they're all using hand flares, so everything's illuminating this red glow, and it's all covered in like frost and ice, and it's all this sort of wreckage of this former whaling village that we actually, if you watch the director's cut, you actually see the predators turn up and they basically massacring the residents of this whaling village, because all we know when you watch the standard cut is that the residents just disappeared. Nobody knows what happened to them, and I just love the way he shoots this scene, especially just like everything's shot in that red glow. It's very deep, intense glow, and you're seeing silhouettes of there. But yeah, if you've seen The Thing, you just like really go, oh, you see what he's done there, and I can see him just like going, oh, I really want to have my Thing moment. Work that in. And then when we get into the actual temple itself, it becomes almost like an adventure movie. It reminded me of like the Brendan. Oh, what's his name?
Brendan Fraser?
Yeah, the Brendan Fraser Mummy. Yeah. Not the Tom Cruise Mummy version. Because it becomes almost like an adventure movie. You're hearing it's all like hidden temples and secret passageways and booby traps and things.
I think I went a different direction from you. I went a little bit more in Tomb Raider. Maybe it's because I just had seen the recent Tomb Raider. So I was really into the whole the temples and how it was like they were saying, oh, this has like Mayan temple, like Mayan pyramids, and then there was also, they were saying, oh, but it's also kind of like Angkor Wat is there also, and it's just kind of like you see this and you're kind of like, wow, like it really shows the depth of just that location by itself.
Yeah, I mean the thing I love about the temple is that there's no wasted inch of space in any of the things. It's not like generic tunnel or passageway. Every sort of area serves its purpose. It's like, oh, here we have the sacrificial chamber. Here we have I love especially where they keep the alien queen, because when the temple awakens, they bring her up and she's been kept in ye olde ice box because she's been frozen. They bring her up and the temple, you see these pyres come up and they defrost the queen, and she's there and she's all chained up and she's basically being stimulated, so she's laying eggs that they can use to start the alien cycle and obviously give them the xenomorphs that they wish to hunt. So I love that there is no wasted space in this. You're seeing and you're getting little hints of how this arrangement worked between the makers of this pyramid, because we're told it's different races that have come together. So you've got elements of Mayan, you've got Egyptian, so it's a real sort of alternate history that is being sort of written here, and it ties in with texts like Chariots of the God and this idea that aliens built things such as the pyramids. Again, it's just that fun little bit of alternate sort of history there, in that you've got these three different elements of different races that have turned up in this one temple. But the mechanics of Anderson's world, again, this is another example. Anderson always establishes the rules for his world really well, and he sticks to them. He doesn't make these great leaps in logic because he needs to fudge the story in any way. So you have the arrangement between the Mayans and the Predators of where they would provide sacrifices and how they're viewing the Predators as being gods. And it makes perfect sense. This would be how the Predators could hold xenomorphs and have it in a sort of controlled environment for themselves. At the same time, he's not discrediting any of the lore that we've seen in the previous films, such as the fact that if the Predators are defeated in battle, they will blow themselves up because it's an honorable warrior's death, and we see that obviously as what happens to the Mayans, that they basically get numped. Because we had that awesome scene with the three Predators on top of the pyramid and the battling the horde of xenomorphs, which I think a lot of people were sort of expecting going into this, because they used it in the trailers the climax shot, and I think a lot of people were oh my god, this is going to be what it's going to be. We're going to have these predators and we're going to have hundreds of aliens, and like, no, it's a little more subdued than that, I'm afraid.
Well, yeah, I mean, everybody expects like this huge, like, war against the predator. I think that in many people's mind, like, xenomorphs definitely feel like they're more lethal in the sense because they're not like restrained. They just go for it, right? And I think that this kind of like, I feel that this kind of changes the dynamic a little. Yeah, they're still, obviously the xenomorphs are still very worthy opponents to who they are, and I feel that, Anderson Ted does a really good take of just building the stories around the creatures that these two alien races that we've learned to know. And I think that, obviously he's a fanboy also because he knows a lot about this stuff to create a story where, like you said, like it follows a nice storyline and it all makes sense. And nothing seems to, be forced, and nothing seems to, it shouldn't be there, I guess. It actually, the one thing that felt like, I think that in all the other movies, what happened was that, usually we see xenomorphs with humans, or the predators with humans. And now it actually feels like the humans, other than the fact that they are the sacrifice, they are incredibly disposable. So you also have like this whole, and this is like a huge cast of characters too. You have a good group of people going down to this thing, and they kind of chop the group up real quick. So it kind of paces really fast, and then you end up having that, that moment of having that kind of like that final girl sort of that moment, and it's interesting to see how all these elements still kind of make the movie really stand out, because I don't know, I mean, it feels like these movies always have like an 80s horror idea of having that final girl, and it's like a favorite topic that a lot of these films always have.
Certainly when we look at the Alien Saga on its own, I mean, the Alien Saga was one of the first horror movies to really give us a strong female lead that we had with obviously the character Ripley. And it sort of carried across as the Alien Saga has gone on, that you've continuously had strong female leads that have turned up within the saga. When it's come to Predator, it's mainly been the sort of the strong male lead, so it's been obviously an interesting counterpart. And when we look at obviously the lore of the Predators do actually have viewed humans on occasion as being an honourable race, and we have obviously seen Predators team up with humans on numerous occasions, often mainly against xenomorphs, because as the film sort of sums up here, the enemy of my enemy is my friend.
Yeah.
Is the sort of glue that ties this all together. This mainly sort of boils down to the fact that we of the 3 Predators, I mean, we were going to get 5 Predators, but Anton had to whistle it down to 3. So we're down to basically the last Predator and the last girl standing as we said, our sort of final girl, which in this case is Alexa, here played by Sana Latham. I have to say, if we were going to pinpoint any major issue of this film, I would say she is it. Because they've obviously tried to create the tough female lead here, but at the same time, they don't want to just recreate Ripley. They've, however, gone off the deep end by just creating this headstrong female character who is argumentative with everyone. She's too tough, even to the audience. We never see any sort of side that we can sort of associate with her. So she's always like this tough girl, and like this too much like of I don't know if it's too clumsy a description, she's just too much of a bitch, basically. She's just too tough, and it's sort of like there's no insight. We obviously have these attempts to soften her character where she's like talks about climbing mountains with her father, and her first day for alcohol was on like one of the highest peaks. But even that like turns into a story of like, oh, but my father died of a blood clot on the way down. Yeah. So there's never any sort of softness to her character, and it only becomes more detrimental when the other characters who sort of balance her out are whittled away.
Yeah. I think you have a really good point there. I think that it's really, she's really hard to stand behind. I think that the idea is there, but like you really see her character have a big shift. Like, it shifts all the time in the sense that, like, I feel like her storyline was the most inconsistent. So you start off and then you see her decide, she's like, okay, no, I am not going to lead this. I will not lead people to die. And then they're like, well, you're the best chance of us surviving this, right? And then she's like, okay, fine, then I'll go, and then they go, and she never, like, I think that it's the fact that she never stands firm enough, but she also likes to act like she is standing really firm. So her character has all these, like, ups and downs, and then, like, at the end, they build this kind of, like, somewhat of a romantic thing that she has with one of the other guys. I can't remember what he does.
Oh, with Sebastian.
Sebastian, played by Raul Bova. And it's kind of like they create this thing where they have this bond. So she suddenly is like, she doesn't care about anybody else, obviously. But she's all about, we're going to survive this. Everything I do has to be surviving and, like, well calculated and all that stuff. And then like at the end it's just like, but by the time she's like, she loses this person, and then suddenly it's like, okay, the friend of my friend is my enemy. I have to do this now. And then she's just like, it's just kind of like, I don't think anybody, I know that it's a movie and, if you're a tough ass bitch, you're going to be like super shut down your emotions and just keep going, right? But it was like, she had that moment of like, oh no, I can't lose you. And then suddenly it was like, okay, we're going to do this. You have to trust me. And then the Predator is just like, okay, I'm going to trust you, human. You were worthy because you did this. I'm kind of like, I was like at that part, I was kind of like, when they bonded as like, they were like, okay, well, we're going to do this together. The whole part of him like giving her weapons with the xenomorph parts and stuff were really cool.
Yeah, it's definitely really cool. But she didn't really do anything to earn the respect of him, because he's basically saves her ass, and it's sort of like, the only thing that I could see that she does is the fact that she gives him his gun back, which they stole in the first place.
Yeah, exactly. And it was also the fact that, like, it was like, she kind of did fight the xenomorph, but then if you think about it, you're in the same room as these two people, and the Predator is your better chance of survival. I'm guessing anybody out of self-defense would have killed it if you had the ability to, right?
Yeah.
So is it really doing it out of survival or out of the fact that it's a deed to this person that she wants to earn the trust to? So the logic falls apart a little there, right?
Yeah.
And that's one of the problems, that like there's a lot of circumstantial things like the environment works and just the scene and how they shoot this and everything works really well. The story of the Predator works really well. But then, it's like the human characters let this movie down a lot because it shifts a lot. Like, there's a lot of, it's not just her. Like, other characters also have this inconsistency. Although I think, to be honest, we noticed something that was really funny that you might like. Well, I don't know if you noticed it, but, Colin Salmon, I think, is the guy that you don't like.
I tell you why I don't like him is because he always sounds like he's putting on a fake-ass accent.
Oh.
It's sort of like, oh, I'm going to do a British accent. And it's just he just comes off so fucking smug all the time. It's all like, just die already.
And he does. And just like in Resident Evil, he gets diced. It is so ridiculous.
It's, Colin Salmon's just annoying, but at the same time, we've also got, Ewan Bremner, who's probably best known for playing Spud on in Trainspotting as the chemical engineer of the team, and he's just irritating here. This googly-eyed, supposed comedic relief, but he wasn't much of a relief to myself. Obviously, Lance Henderson's, he's a working actor. He's so dedicated to turn up in these things. He does a really good job, and I love the fact he does little nods to the Bishop characters, such as we see him doing, like, the knife game with his pen when he's in his office, and it's such a little nod there, which is really cool. But, yeah, obviously back to when we look at Alexa and the Predator, their little teaming up moment, I was sure that they were going to high five. It's so stupid. And then even before this, we do obviously get like moments. We get to see like the Predator code of honor in effect, such as the fact that when we see Lance Henderson's character goes to attack the Predator, and he's like held up by the Predator, and he can see using his scanning inside that he's obviously dying of lung cancer, and that the Predator sees that there's no reason to attack him. He's, as I said, he's not someone who is able like 100%, it would be honourable for him to kill him in battle. And we saw this in Predator 2, where the female police officer isn't killed because the Predator can see that she's pregnant. So the only way to kill her would be to effectively kill an infant, which again goes against their code of honor. So it was great to see the fact that Anderson worked this in, but I'm sure he was like trying to do the same for the pairing between the Predator and Alexa. But the only thing I could come up with, I mean, this is like, I don't know, the third or fourth time I've seen this now, is the fact that it's down to those two, that it's lack of options that they've teamed up. But even then, why we have the Predator marking her with like the Warrior's mark, which serves no purpose and is certainly not earned in the slightest, until and plays no sort of real purpose until we get to the end and the rest of the Predators decide to show up after all the work's done.
I mean, they didn't have a hunt. They didn't have to go to the proving grounds. Those are the grandpas, you know. They were the aunts and uncles of this guy, right? So it was nothing like, you know. It's just really funny because, you know, you have that. There's a lot of moments in this where it doesn't. It's like near the end, like that big scene in the end after they team up and everything till the end just is really, it goes really off the rails dumb, you know? Like there are so many moments that don't make sense. And, you know, I kind of see like the merit in them doing this, but I think it's just executed really badly because they didn't build the characters properly. And, like, the scenario didn't really make sense. And then you have, like, you know, this thing is like suddenly the Predator had no reason to do it. And I guess he did, but I mean, he had no reason to take off his mask at the end. Like, I did not understand why he took it off.
They just do that.
Because it just made him more vulnerable. That was the only reason for it. It was contrived. It was that had to happen in order for him to become more vulnerable. And, like, she had, like, no reaction. You know, I mean, both the xenomorphs and Predators are super ugly. They are, like, horribly ugly. And she had, like, no reaction to it. And I'm just like, I'm not saying that she should. It's polite not to. But
I know what you're saying, because
didn't even have any, like, shock. You know, like, I would have been, like, at least, like, if I was in her place, if you saw something like this for the first time, you would have a kind of, like, shock in your mind, even if it's, like, a flash in your eyes, you know?
Oh, I totally understand what you're saying, because obviously in Predator 1 and Predator 2, both Danny Glover and Arnold Schwarzenegger's characters, they remark on how ugly the Predators are. It's always been remarked upon. But yeah, it made no sense. I mean, up to this point, I don't believe the Predators have been seen unmasked by any of the humans, so it made no sense for her not to have some sort of reaction. I mean, yes, you expect something of her, but I don't think you ever expect what a Predator actually looks like the first time you see it. It's, well, as I say, it's kind of aggressive, obviously, with that mandible mouth for a start. So. When we obviously look at the design work for the Predator and the Alien in this one, this also becomes a bit of a bugbear because the Predators are portrayed as like these hulking giants, which, yes, they are obviously tall, but here, whenever they move, it's always like these big stomping movements and like the camera shakes, and it's sort of like, yeah, they were kind of a little more graceful before because they were swinging around the trees or moving like swiftly through like the urban jungle. But here they're like big hulking, like, creatures, like the ground shakes when they run, and it always seems to be in slow motion when we have these two fights. And I guess I kind of appreciate the fact that we haven't got the same sort of frantic cuts that we have like in the later Resident Evil movies where it just went insane every time we got into an action scene. Here, at least we get to see some fun action. We get to see the Predators pull out some new toys. We get to see like aliens thrown across the room and like smashed into walls. I think there's a great scene where an alien swung around by its tail and it's like basically smashed against 4 pillars, which is really, really cool. And the Predators, the aliens, I mean, themselves, they're seen while when we saw them obviously in like the previous ones, like Aliens in particular, where they seemed a lot weaker. And I have to say the Colonial Marines did a lot better than the Predators do, and they had less impressive equipment for a start. But these aliens, I mean, Anson really sort of, he doesn't try and change anything with them. I mean, they're still like the sneaky sort of Predators. They hide in the shadows, they blend with the environment, and they use all the advantages they have, like, you know, the tail and the mandible jaws and the acid for blood, which continues to be a real pain in the ass when you burn these things. So I appreciate the fact that he also marked out his own sort of little favourite amongst the aliens, because we have one of the aliens gets caught in a net and it has like a grid pattern formed in the head. Yeah. He then uses that damaged alien to like, oh, this is the leader of these, and we see like the hive mind more in play than we've seen in other films in the series, which is really great to see as well. So, yeah, I mean, while I don't appreciate how the Predators portray their movement, I liked all the usual Predator things that we have here, and certainly gives us some interesting new mask designs for the three Predators we have here.
Yeah, no, I mean, I get where you're going. I think that the alien, it's like I said, like the humans are the downfall of the film, whereas like the aliens and the Predators kind of clash were really fun. I really like those fighting scenes, and whenever they came upon, like, up against each other, I just wonder if there would have been a possibility of doing a film like this without actually having surviving humans. Like, it would be like a no dialogue sort of film, but it might be a pretty fun sort of like versus battle. I don't know. Maybe we could do that in Mortal Kombat one day. Just for the hell.
When you say this, I kind of imagine the scene where the critters are talking to each other in Critters, and it's like, oh, they've got guns and cheese wrecks, and he like comes in and the subtitles a bit bombing. I bet at the same time I can see like your summer blockbuster audience going, what the hell's this? I have to read a movie? I thought I was going to go and see the punchy kicky alien movie, not the half the highbrow reedy movie.
The alien foreign language movie, yes.
Yeah, I don't think Anderson, I mean, first of all, I don't think he really had the budget to be messing around with the franchise to that extent. I mean, here he's making a film for $60 million. The film turns in a profit of $172.5 million. So it's a good day to be Anderson. It's always a good day if your film doesn't bomb. It's surprising the fact that he didn't want to come back and do another, and it was obviously he went over to do Requiem, which I think a lot of people saw as being more what they wanted from the film, less an revenge movie, just sort of more alien hunts predator in the city. There's so much in this film I'm willing to sort of forgive, especially now I've seen it a few times. I know what I'm getting into. But as I said, the character of Alexa, she's just unforgivable, and I don't know whether it's because as I said, the bond between her and Predator doesn't come off that believable, and for her to be seen as the female Predator, so to speak, it makes no sense. But where we obviously compare it to in the books, the original female Predator, which was Makisho Noguchi, who's a female colonist who basically survives this group of predators and is brought into a predator society. It's like the token human, and she gets like her own predator armor, and it has like constantly battle against these other predators to retain her standing within this sort of society. And that would have been an interesting way to go if she had been like on that sort of level. But as I said, she's just so cold, she's so unlikable.
But she wasn't like Alexa wasn't even brought with them, right? Like they didn't take her along, did they?
No, she's basically left in the Antarctic
Yeah,
be told.
exactly, right?
She's left
I
to go
was
back
like,
to the boat, which
I was like, they worked so hard to build this bond between Predator and Alexa,
yeah.
and they didn't even like, there were moments I thought it was like, oh my god, this is gonna be, like a cool bonding, and they could have just like, it would have worked out, right? I guess I don't know.
I think,
I don't know
yeah, I
anymore.
mean, yeah, I can see what you're saying, that you would have thought that she would have gone off with the Predators at the end. That would have been really cool.
Yeah.
Obviously, the way the film ends with the body of the final Predator, he's like, as I said, he's killed in battle at the end.
Yeah.
And we see he gets the warrior's death. He's like carried off onto the ship and like put on the, I don't know, the altar, so to speak. And then we see obviously the alien burst out of his chest, because from what I'm led to believe, that was put in because fans wanted to see it. They wanted to see the alien burst out of a Predator's chest to see what it creates, because
but I mean, it's kind of like the surprise ending, because he was attacked by a face hugger, and you wonder why the effects hadn't gotten to him yet, and it'd been like a super long time. So I guess like his body was able to fight it off a lot more. But I don't know. I mean, like, I don't know the reasoning behind it, but I actually found it kind of cheesy, ending to end like that with the bursting, and it felt kind of ridiculous, but I don't know if that leads into like the second film.
It does, yeah.
It does, right? Because I saw Requiem such a long time ago that I don't remember anything from it.
From what we're led to believe, the Pred alien that we see at the end basically erupts out of his chest, and it apparently kills all the Predators on board this ship, and the ship crashes into this small rural town, and aliens have basically run amok over the town. And this Pred alien's going round and doing its thing. And we got another Predator that's come in, that's like brought into the town to act as like the cleanup crew.
Okay.
Which again is an interesting aspect, the fact they send one. I mean, we have 3 for this hunt, so why they to send one to do a whole town, I don't know, but maybe the budget was the budget of Predator HQ wasn't so good that month. It's all like, we really like to help you out, Gary, but hands are tied here. We got a lot of investments here and things.
We lost too many. You just got a deal.
Yeah. Here it ends as like a nice little stinger at the end. It's all like, oh look, you get to see the Pred alien, and it's like got the mandible. It's an alien, but it's got mandible jaws, same as a Predator, and it's, it looks cool. I don't know. The final battle between obviously with Lex and the Swine Predator versus the Queen alien, I think was really, really, really cool. Especially because it takes place in the whaling village. So we get this absolutely monstrous sized queen, and the only other time we've really seen a queen battle is obviously the iconic Ripley in the power loader armor versus the queen on board the ship, and it was obviously limited by the abilities of the effects at the time, and it looks really cool, and it serves its purpose at the time. But obviously here now we can use CGI effects. We have this like towering monster queen just like smashing through buildings, and I think it was really cool to actually see an alien, not defeated by being knocked out of an airlock, which seems to always be the way it goes in those films. So when apparently if you don't have an airlock, a frozen lake will do. And part of me always
just
thought
freeze it. That's the only thing you can do. Just freeze its ass. That's all it is.
Yeah, part of me for like when they started talking in the sequel, your mind goes, it's like, is it this alien queen that we see at the bottom there? Does she like get free and like turn up somewhere else, like the currents floated downstream somewhere? So, but no, it wasn't the case to be. We just got some generic nonsense. So, let's talk a bit about the cast here, because I mean this is a real international cast we have here. We've got, as I said, we've got Scottish actors, we've got English actors, we've got Americans, we've got European actors in particular. We've got Agatha de la Boulaye, who plays Adele, also known as the Mercenary with the cool hair. And it's a shame really, because we have so many interesting like characters here that is almost on the same level of like the Alien saga, where you constantly have like you would have all these interesting sort of characters. And here we have interesting characters, but they're either killed off way too quick or just never given any development to really sort of flesh out. And it was, again, this is just one of the more frustrating aspects, the fact that we are introduced to this team, but we're never, even if they are going to be disposable fodder, it'd be nice to know a little bit about them, get some sort of, depth to their characters, but it just never sadly happens.
Yeah, well, I mean, the only one where, we have a little bit of depth is with Ewan Bremner, and when he gets trapped with what's his face there. I'd like to say Tommy Flanagan. I don't know.
So when he's I think it was Tommy.
Yeah. It was. Yeah, so like those two, they were, they kind of had a little bit more of a swap in their position. Whereas, like, they were the unlikely two who got trapped together. One is kind of like a wuss, and the other one is, the other one's supposed to be this badass guy, and then they fall into this shifting, I don't know what you call it, shifting corridors or something, and they get trapped in this little space. And I think that part is really genius in the sense that it's really smart how they structured it. But, I mean, like, you see these two characters, and then they start talking about, like, Ewan Bremner is like telling this guy, like, well, we have kids, we don't have the luxury to give up, sort of thing, right? And then it takes like 4 seconds later, and then they're all killed off. So it's kind of like really ridiculous, because they give you these smart, like, these good moments that could potentially be like kind of like a bonding moment where they could use these characters a little bit further. But I think it's just, maybe it's the restriction of how they wanted the movie to go in a certain direction, and they were heading towards there, that they created these characters and just killed it off. And the main impact of this scene was really to, like, every single death was to show a certain aspect of this elaborate temple, like this proving grounds that they have. And I think that, in that sense it's good, but it also, like I said, it makes the humans incredibly disposable. So you don't really care for them anymore. And when you put a movie like that, it's kind of like, well, who do you care for then? Like, what am I watching this for? Am I watching this for someone to get out of this alive? Or am I watching for, like, one or the other side? Like, whichever fanboy you're more of, for aliens or predators to come out on top.
Well,
like, it's kind of blurry on a movie like that.
I looked at the poster. It does say, whoever wins, we lose. So, but then again, I don't know why they put that, because, I mean, the predators they hunt humans for sport. They don't hunt as a conquering race. Because obviously when predators hunt humans, I mean, they collect skulls, obviously, as trophies. And I don't ever understood why they chose to go with that tagline, because as I said, yes, if the aliens win, we lose, but unless they're obviously referring to the fact that the predators are just really sore losers and have a tendency to nuke ancient civilizations when they lose this battle, I don't know. Maybe that's what they're hinting at. Further viewing. I mean, this is obviously a bit more of a difficult one. I mean, obviously, you kind of want to just go watch the franchise, read the books.
Yeah. Like, I mean, it seems like, if you haven't seen Predators, the Predator franchise or the Alien franchise, obviously those are the obvious go-tos. Just to, I think, all the movies are pretty decent. Obviously there are some that are worse, and some people don't like other ones. I mean, same with Predator. I also think that Predators was a good choice, because it's a little bit more self-contained. I mean, if you really, like, we mentioned a few titles already, like, obviously The Thing is a really good one to watch, because it's kind of like what the Wayland Village is built on. That sort of stuff. I mean, I would say if you want a little bit adventurous, I mean, Elwood talked about The Mummy, That could be a good one to watch, or any of the Tomb Raiders, I guess, because, I actually had a thought in my mind. I was like, what would have happened if Anderson directed Tomb Raider? Would that have been different? Because it feels like he would have been really fitting for the role. Anyways, I might have mentioned that in Resident Evil, but either way.
Is it just because it's a comic book? It's a video game movie and he hasn't directed it that we want
No,
to see?
because I thought that, like, the way he created the temples was really smart.
Yeah.
And I think that that's the layout behind, like, a Lara Croft adventure, is having, like, smart tombs that she goes into. And there's, like, these interesting stories, and it feels like he could really be a really good director to make a movie like that.
Myself, I'm going to go with the 1998 film Deep Rising, directed by Stephen Sommers. This is basically a haunted ship movie. Basically, a group of mercenaries are going to rob a luxury cruise liner called the Argonauta, only to get on board and find that the crew and everyone has mysteriously disappeared. Of course, it's not long before they discover the big bad monster that's basically consumed everyone, and it soon becomes a fun little alien-style adventure as they attempt to escape the ship and avoid being eaten alive by this monster that's taken on board. This is actually a fun little adventure sort of horror movie, and one which has a cliffhanger which sorely made me want to see a sequel to this, which never happened. But no, this is a really fun movie. I mean, it stars Treat Williams, Rebecca Johnson, and Anthony Harold. And I think if you enjoyed this film, or just like looking for something similar to like Alien, then Deep Rising's got a lot of fun moments. And it's actually got a couple of shocks that caught me by surprise, even as someone who normally can sort of see when things are coming up, especially in terms of jump scares. I think then it's definitely a really good one to check out.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I've never seen it before, so I don't know what to say.
I know what we're watching.
Okay.
I mean, that obviously brings us to the end of another edition of Movies and Tea. Thank you as always for listening. Kim, where are we going to go next?
Next movie we're jumping to 2008 with Death Race. This time, obviously, the cast gets a little bit more of a star title as we get, we did have the other one before, right? With Kurt Russell. But we get a big star title here with, like, Jason Statham being the main actor here. Death Race is, like, set in this dystopian world where he gets he gets framed into sent into this jail where they have to do these death races to their freedom kind of thing, I guess. Do they even get? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's a reworking of Roger Corman's classic Death Race 2000. This time replacing the cross-country race where people are run over for points. This time now races take place within a prison as Jason Statham's framed race car driver is forced to take part in the death races as the warden's star attraction in order to try and win his freedom while going up against the gangster Machine Gun Joe and any number of colourful racers that she's gathered for this season of death races. This is Anderson's other franchise, to say the least. And it's one of my favourites of his filmography, and one that I'm really looking forward to talking about on the next episode. If you haven't done already, please do hit that like or subscribe button if you're listening to us on Podomatic or iTunes or Stitcher, wherever you happen to be listening to us. We are pretty much everywhere now. Also, you can check us out on our blog, which is
moviesandteapodcast.wordpress.com.
Thank you, Kim. And on there you can find our complete archive of episodes to date. So you can listen to all the episodes of Season 1. You can also check out some fun writing pieces from myself and Kim on the works of Paul W. S. Anderson and other related subjects. So, yeah. And if you want to follow us on Facebook and Twitter, we're on there as well as Instagram as well. So please do hit those likes and subscribes, and maybe leave us some nice comments and feedback. Let us know what you think of Paul W. S. Anderson films, and the films we've also been discussing this season. We'd love to hear from yourself. But until next time,